A young woman arrives in Hollywood chasing a dream. The dream of becoming someone, of being seen, of becoming a star. But only a few months later, her body would be found in an empty field in Los Angeles. Cut in half, carefully positioned, completely drained of blood. The crime would shock the entire country, and the killer would never be found. Her name was Elizabeth Short, but history would remember her by another name, the Black Dahlia. Elizabeth Short was born in 1924 in Massachusetts. Her childhood was far from glamorous. Her father disappeared when she was still young, leaving the family in financial hardship. Her mother struggled to support the children, and Elizabeth grew up moving between places, trying to find stability. But Elizabeth had a vision for her future. She was fascinated by Hollywood. In the 1940s, Hollywood was the center of dreams. Actors, directors, producers, and hopeful young talents filled the city, all trying to make their mark in the film industry. Elizabeth believed she belonged there. She had striking dark hair, pale skin, and a dramatic style that made her stand out. Friends described her as charming and charismatic. She enjoyed attention, conversation, and the excitement of nightlife. But her life was also unpredictable. Elizabeth moved frequently between cities. She stayed with friends, acquaintances, sometimes even people she had only recently met. She didn't have a stable job, and money was often tight. Still, she continued to pursue the Hollywood lifestyle. During this time, people began giving her a nickname. Because of her dark clothing and mysterious look, some started calling her the Black Dahlia, inspired by a popular film noir released around that time. The nickname would follow her everywhere. But no one could imagine that one day it would become tied to one of the most infamous murder cases in American history. In early January of 1947, Elizabeth was living in Southern California and spending time with different acquaintances around Los Angeles. Her exact movements during those final days remain partially unclear even today. The last confirmed sighting of Elizabeth Short was on January 9, 1947. After that, she vanished. For almost a week, no one knew where she was. Then, on the morning of January 15th, something horrifying happened. A woman walking with her young daughter near an empty lot in Los Angeles noticed something lying in the grass. From a distance, it looked strange, almost like a store mannequin that had been discarded. Curious, she stepped closer, and then she realized it wasn't a mannequin at all. It was the body of a woman. The body had been cut in half at the waist. The upper and lower halves were placed a short distance apart, almost deliberately arranged. The arms were raised above the head. The legs were spread apart. It looked less like a crime scene and more like a disturbing display. Police quickly arrived and secured the area. What they discovered made the case even more disturbing. There was almost no blood at the scene, which meant the murder had not taken place there. Elizabeth had been killed somewhere else, and her body had been transported to the location afterward. But that wasn't the only shocking detail. Her face had been mutilated with deep cuts extending from the corners of her mouth toward her ears. This type of wound is sometimes referred to as a Glasgow smile, a disturbing and extremely rare form of facial mutilation. The body had also been carefully cleaned. Investigators noticed that whoever committed the crime had washed the body before leaving it in the lot. Even more unsettling was the precision of the cuts used to separate the body. Medical examiners believed the dissection had been performed with surgical skill. The killer might have had medical training, possibly a doctor, or someone with experience in anatomy. News of the crime spread rapidly across Los Angeles. Within days, it became national news. Newspapers were filled with headlines about the brutal murder of the mysterious young woman known as the Black Dahlia. The story fascinated the public. Who was Elizabeth Short, really? What had happened to her during the days before her death? And most importantly, who could have done something so brutal? Police began investigating every aspect of Elizabeth's life. They spoke with friends, acquaintances, former roommates, and people who had crossed paths with her in recent months. What they discovered only made the investigation more complicated. Elizabeth had known a lot of people. She had spent time with soldiers, businessmen, aspiring actors, and various people connected to Hollywood nightlife. This created a massive list of potential suspects, but there was still no clear lead. Then, something very strange happened. A few days after the body was discovered, a newspaper office received a mysterious package in the mail. Inside were several personal belongings that belonged to Elizabeth Short. Her birth certificate, photographs, personal cards. The items had been carefully cleaned with gasoline, likely to remove fingerprints. But the most disturbing part was the letter that came with them. It was signed with a chilling message: the Black Dahlia Avenger. The killer wasn't hiding. He was playing a game, and it seemed like he wanted the entire country to watch. The letters didn't stop there. Over the following weeks, several more messages were sent to newspapers in Los Angeles. Some of them appeared to contain clues. Others were simply taunts directed at the police. The writer seemed confident, almost amused by the investigation. It was as if the killer believed he was untouchable. Meanwhile, detectives worked tirelessly to identify suspects. The investigation quickly became one of the largest in the history of the Los Angeles Police Department. More than 150 people would eventually be questioned. Some of them even confessed to the crime. But every confession eventually fell apart under scrutiny. None of the suspects could be definitively connected to the murder. The case became a puzzle with too many pieces, and none that fit together properly. But investigators did begin forming theories. One of the earliest theories focused on the precision of the crime. The way the body had been cut suggested knowledge of human anatomy. This led police to investigate doctors, surgeons, and medical students in the area. Several individuals were examined as possible suspects. But again, nothing could be proven. Another theory suggested the possibility of a serial killer. The late 1940s saw several violent crimes in California involving unusual mutilations. Some researchers believe that the Black Dahlia murder might have been connected to a larger pattern of killings. However, no direct link was ever confirmed. A different theory focused on Elizabeth's personal life. Some investigators believed the killer could have been someone who knew her, possibly someone who had developed an unhealthy obsession. Elizabeth was known to be friendly and social. She met many people during her time in Los Angeles. If one of those relationships had turned dangerous, it might explain the brutality of the crime. But decades later, one suspect would stand out more than any other. His name was George Hodel. Hodel was a respected physician living in Los Angeles during the 1940s. On the surface, he appeared successful and intelligent, but behind closed doors, his life was far more complicated. Years later, Hodel's own son, a former homicide detective, began investigating the case himself. The more he looked into it, the more convinced he became that his father was the Black Dahlia killer. There were disturbing details. George Hodel had once been investigated by police during the original case. At one point, detectives even placed a hidden recording device inside his home. During one of the recorded conversations, Hodel made a chilling remark. He said, "Suppose I did kill the Black Dahlia. They can't prove it now." Despite this statement, there was never enough evidence to charge him with the crime. And George Hodel died in 1999 without ever facing trial. Today, more than 75 years later, the murder of Elizabeth Short remains officially unsolved. The case continues to fascinate investigators, journalists, and historians. Countless books have been written, documentaries have been produced, new suspects and theories still appear from time to time, but the truth remains hidden somewhere in the past. The empty lot where Elizabeth's body was discovered is now surrounded by ordinary homes and quiet streets. People pass by every day without realizing the history beneath their feet. But the mystery still lingers. Somewhere, at some point, someone knew exactly what happened to Elizabeth Short. Someone knew who killed the Black Dahlia. And yet, that secret was never revealed. Which leaves one haunting possibility. The killer may have lived the rest of his life as an ordinary person, walking the same streets, passing by neighbors, living quietly while carrying one of the most infamous secrets in American history. And the question that still echoes after all these years remains the same. Who killed the Black Dahlia?